Morning all. Argentina are on top of the world this morning. 1,000 games into his astonishing career, Lionel Messi lifted the famous trophy in Qatar's Lusail Stadium. His team's, 3-3 draw over France, after they won on penalties, of course. It is being hailed as one of the greatest World Cup finals of all time. Rob Harris now reports from Doha.
Argentina didn't wait to fly home to start the parade. Leaving Lusail Stadium on an open-top bus, the World Cup was already on display through the streets for Qataris and thousands of Argentine fans to join the celebrations. On the night, Lionel Messi fulfilled his destiny. Messi received the World Cup in a bisht after being draped in the traditional Arab cloak by the Emir of Qatar to close this first World Cup in the Middle East. It's a final that began with the 35-year-old scoring the first against France from the penalty spot midway through the first half, before his majestic touch on the counter-attack helped Angel Di Maria double the lead. France reached 80 minutes without a shot on target, until a penalty finally presented Kylian Mbappe with his chance. Barely a minute was needed by Mbappe to complete an incredible turnaround at 2-2. The fingertips of Hugo Lloris denied Messi a late winner, but he did find a way to find the net again in extra time. There was still another twist from his teammate at Qatar-owned Paris Saint-Germain. Mbappe's shot was handled. The equaliser from the spot made him the first man to score a World Cup final hat-trick since Sir Geoff Hurst in 1966. 3-3 it ended. Penalties settled this thrilling final. France missed two, but Argentina, starting with Messi, scored all theirs. A 4-2 shootout success celebrated across Buenos Aires, where Messi will soon be joining the party.
This epic final, an all-time classic, will be remembered as Messi's final. The night one of the greatest footballers of all time won the last major prize to elude him. Just like Diego Maradona in 1986, Lionel Messi is a World Cup winner with Argentina, confirming his legendary status.
We are very, very happy tonight. This night is wonderful.
I was talking to my father, he was crying. I was crying until 5-10 minutes ago. I can't believe it. I still can't believe it.
It's very special for the people of Argentina, for the people like the football, for me, for my family.
This World Cup will forever be shrouded in controversy for the discrimination and deaths of migrant workers. But the most expensive sports event ever staged gave Qatar its dream final. For Messi, this is where he finally conquered the world as one of football's ultimate winners. Rob Harris, Sky News, Lusail in Qatar.
Now, it was Argentina's first World Cup win since 1986, when it was Diego Maradona lifting the trophy in Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of people poured onto the streets of Buenos Aires to celebrate after a roller coaster of emotions. And this was the scene at Maradona's home. He'll no doubt be looking down with a smile on his face. Freya Chan has more from Buenos Aires.
The final won by Argentina. I mean, look at this. Messi has won his first ever World Cup. That puts him on the same level as Maradona. Look how happy people are here today. I mean, that was a really, really tense moment just then. Everyone was silent for a moment. That was Argentina. Everyone was silent for one moment there. Bravo, Messi! Bravo, Messi!
Reliably informed that Freya is actually absolutely fine. But let's move our attention away from the football to the strikes and remind you which ones are happening this week. Well, there will be more rail walkouts, this time 4 days around Christmas, but also in January as well. Members of the Royal College of Nursing in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, they'll be walking out for a second time on Tuesday. What about ambulance staff? Well, that includes paramedics, emergency care assistants and call handlers. They are due to strike on the 21st and the 28th. Meanwhile, postal workers will stage another 2-day strike from the 23rd. Border Force is to be walking away from the job from the 23rd to the 26th, and then again from the 28th to the 31st. And from today, driving test examiners and some civil servants will also join the rolling strike action. I will let's speak to Sky's Caterina Vitozzi, who is in Liverpool for us today, and any number of people striking today, but including civil servants.
Yes, we're outside a Job Centre Plus here in Liverpool, where members of the PCSU union, that's the Public and Commercial Services Union, particularly this one, the Department of Work and Pensions, amongst many public sector and civil servants, service agencies, as you say, striking today. About 30, 40 people here on the picket line. Let's speak to Martin Kavanagh, who's been organising this, but a number of civil service, civil sector strikes today. Tell us, what are you asking for?
OK, well, I mean, our members have experienced 20 years and more of pay restraints under the government, under various governments. And right now, our offer that have been imposed upon our members right across the civil service is an average of 2%, where inflation's running at 11%. So the cost of living crisis is biting really hard. Job security is rapidly becoming a thing of the past in the civil service. The government are intending to cut our redundancy terms by a third, and in addition to that, our members have since 2019 overpaid every single month 2% more for their pensions than the government's own calculations suggest we should. So it's a real terms pay cut on top of what we are already suffering.
Have you had any counter offers, any movement from the government about what your demands, what you're asking for?
Absolutely nothing, no. I mean, we've written to the government as soon as we got the live mandates through early in November. We wrote to the government. The government have said the door is open and that the door is not closed to talks, but there's not been one single penny offered. There's not even been an offer of potentially more money if we get back around the negotiating table. So our members right across various sectors of the civil service since last week have been taking action to try and get the government to move. Our members desperately need money now.
That is a phrase we've heard, and our viewers will have heard, the door is always open on the side of the government. What does that actually mean for people negotiating from your side? Is there a sense that there is an open communication flow to try and prevent strikes like this at a time of year when, you know, there are people who will be worried now that they won't be able to get their correct benefits in time for Christmas because of actions like this?
I mean, we are prepared to talk at any time. We've always been very clear about that. Our General Secretary, Mark Sawaka, has been very clear about that. But there's no point in being open for talks if the government are prepared to at least start the process of trying to talk about more money now. There's no good offering jam tomorrow. And in the government's case, they're not even offering jam tomorrow. They're expecting their own workforce at a time of the economic crisis to basically have a 10% real terms pay cut. When families are going under, when we know that the services are desperately needed across the wider communities, and our members are not just facing that pay cut and that the harshest Christmas and winter they've ever faced, but actually the service they provided are going under, because at the same time the threat to job cuts, thousands of job cuts, is hanging over our members constantly.
But the Department of Work and Pensions have said, based on the calculations of your offer, it's unaffordable that the pay increases that you're asking for, costing at about, over £2 billion. They say we simply can't afford that at the moment. What do you say about that?
Well, we just don't buy that. We do not buy that at all. We know that billions of pounds of the public purse are squandered month in, month out. We understand and know, because we see the headlines that only a fortnight ago the government was prepared to write off billions of pounds in unused contracts that didn't appear or materialise during the pandemic. Their own workforce now has had 20 years of pay restraint. The government has the responsibility to actually come to us and say, we want to open up negotiations, we are serious about giving you more money, because we understand and accept that it's wrong that civil servants who provide benefit have to go around the other side of the counter and claim benefit. 40,000 of our members having to do that, 45,000 are using food banks.
Martin Kavanagh, thank you very much. Organising today's protest here in Liverpool, one of similar sites across England today. Public and Commercial Services Union, civil sector workers across a variety of different agencies on strike, pay the key demand.
Caterina, thank you. But let's stick with the strikes, focusing this time on what's going on within the health service. Joining us, our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen. And Tamara, I keep hearing this mantra that we want to keep negotiations going. Steve Barclay reaching out to the unions to see if they can secure more talks. But again, I ask the very simple, straightforward question. If they are not going to talk about pay, which is why the nurses are on strike, what on earth is the point?
Well, that message about no negotiation on pay is made again loud and clear this morning. Steve Barclay has said he wants to talk to the unions. Of course, we've got the nurses going on strike again tomorrow, and ambulance trusts, 5 of them in England, going on strike on Wednesday for the first time in 30 years. Both of the unions representing them have said they want substantive talks about pay, but the message from a source at the Department of Health this morning is that the position on pay hasn't changed, and what Steve Barclay is keen to talk to them about is patient safety and non-pay issues that both of the unions have also raised. So the prospect of any of the strikes this week being called off looks pretty remote at the moment. As to whether there is much clamour politically for the government to secure a deal, perhaps by giving a one-off pay rise to the nurses, as has been suggested, I'm not detecting much clamour from Tory MPs, to be honest. Yesterday, a cabinet minister said the government was resolute on no negotiations, and it seems that that position stands this morning.
Thanks, Tamara. A huge rescue operation is underway in the Gulf of Thailand to rescue missing sailors from a sinking warship. The Thai military has sent 3 Navy vessels and 2 helicopters after the warship suffered an engine malfunction amidst choppy waters. Well, the ship itself went down before midnight just south of Bangkok. More than 30 sailors are still missing. The High Court will hand down its judgment on a legal challenge to the government's controversial Rwanda deportation policy later today. The first planned deportation flight was blocked in June by a last-minute injunction. Then campaigners brought a judicial review. Ministers have said the policy is necessary to deter illegal immigration. They also insist Rwanda is a safe country for people to be sent to. Steelworkers will be marching to 10 Downing Street this afternoon to deliver a petition to the Prime Minister which says the government must step up to protect the steel industry. Bus fares are being capped at £2 by 130 operators outside London to help passengers with the cost of living crisis. Children's tickets will be frozen at £1. The Department for Transport is funding the £60 million scheme in England. Well, there are growing concerns about anti-Jewish hate crime, and the government's independent advisor is calling on secondary schools to cover contemporary anti-Semitism in addition to learning about the Holocaust. And we are joined now on the programme by that advisor, Lord Mann. Lord Mann, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Explain the rationale behind this. As I would have thought, particularly given the anti-Semitism that has been in the political process over the past few years, that this would be something that would already be taught in schools. Just explain what level it is at the moment, if at all, and why you feel that the contemporary anti-Semitism needs to be taught.
Well, Holocaust education is taught in schools, but contemporary anti-Semitism, so what young Jewish teenagers suffer on the streets or in school or elsewhere on social media, it isn't covered in schools at all. And I'm suggesting a very simple change, that it should be inserted in a very small way into the school curriculum in secondary schools, and perhaps even more significantly, that teachers, as part of their teacher training and their professional development, should have, again, a small but vitally important element of learning what is anti-Semitism and how to deal with it. And the basis for saying that is the research that I've seen, but also that I've carried out, not least from the Institute of Education, who do most of the teacher training in how to teach the Holocaust. They say to me they're repeatedly asked about contemporary anti-Semitism, how to deal with issues in schools. And it's clear that teachers don't have sufficient knowledge of what anti-Semitism is and haven't been taught in the skills of how to deal with it. A small input could have a disproportionate impact. So I'm recommending that to government. But beyond that, we've actually begun the work of how that's done with one academy chain, the Outward Grange Academy chain in the north of England, and the National Holocaust Centre and the Institute of Education are part of the team of experts who are taking that forward over the next year. So we're providing something for government that should be ready by the end of the year. I'm saying to government, we need something in every school, not just in this one particular chain of schools.
Indeed, and I can completely see the rationale for that. I just wonder, what has been the driver of this rise in anti-Semitism directed towards, well, and indeed being shared amongst young people. I mean, people do think immediately will go to people like Kanye West and the abhorrent comments that he made. But there is a rather more insidious element to this, and it's the involvement of neo-Nazi groups.
There is. The far right is not so much resurgent, but is using the internet to good impact to spread its hatred. Where does West get his quite bizarre but consistent thread of hatred from? How does that get into his head? Well, I don't know, but I do know it has to be challenged and educated about. And whenever there's conflict in the Middle East, we see a spike in anti-Semitic incidents. And that means abuse, violence, threats directed particularly against Jewish teenagers, be it on the bus, at the bus stop, in schools or elsewhere. And so this needs to be better challenged. Education can play its part. And it's the one, I've looked back over the last 15 years over what we've done. In some places, a very good job's been done. The situation in universities has been turned round. But schools have been ignored. That now has to be a top priority, and I'm recommending that today to government.
Well, let's see what the government come back with. John Mann, Lord Mann, lovely to have you on the programme, and have a very Merry Christmas when it comes.
Thank you.
Now, let's have a quick look at the weather, and you might have noticed there's been a bit of a big swing in temperatures from freezing to thawing. Sky's meteorologist Jo Robinson is no longer shivering in her back garden in Oxfordshire this morning. In fact, it looks not too bad. Is this going to last, though, Jo?
Well, the very mild conditions that we're seeing today, that will last for today. It will be mild or temperatures around average for the next few days. And then there are signs that we will see that Arctic air trying to move in again as we head towards Christmas. At the moment, there's some uncertainty, but it's looking like northern areas could see that Arctic air moving in and a risk of some snow as we head towards Christmas Day. But that milder air more likely in the south. But there's some uncertainty, so that's something that we can keep an eye on. But certainly for today, highs of around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, so a big change from last week.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So we've lost that Arctic air now. We have temperatures already at 13 or 14 degrees Celsius quite widely. There are some warnings, though. We do have that very mild air, but it does mean that we have got some heavy rain and strong winds. So some heavy rain across southern parts, particularly today. There are warnings in place by the Met Office. In excess of 100 millimetres is possible on Dartmoor. So warnings in place, but a very mild day. Outbreaks of rain spreading eastwards across many areas, and strong winds too, with coastal gales in places. Further rain tonight, but drier on Tuesday.
Let's bring you a little more on the World Cup. To borrow a phrase, 30 years of hurt, 36 of them, in fact, ended for Argentina with that victory over France. And Buenos Aires went bonkers. Hundreds of thousands of people poured onto the streets, into the fountains, up the poles, and they partied into the night. Well, let's get some reaction from Argentina and speak to one fan, Paula Bracchi. Paula, first and foremost, congratulations. Have you been to bed yet?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I live in a small city. I don't live in the capital city, but here the celebrations have been crazy too. I couldn't get to the obelisk, but here people are crazy, are very, very happy, euphoric about this. They've been waiting for this for a long time. So we are really, really, really excited about the result.
Were you confident going into the match? Because France, to be fair, they were looking pretty good.
Yeah, they were. In fact, I think that I'm not a football specialist, but I thought that they played really well too. But yeah, I was confident. I was really confident because this team is. I really liked the team. Everyone who was in the team, when they were young, they had Messi as an idol, and they grew up looking up to him, and the fact that they were playing together now, I think this has made it, I don't know, more more exciting. It has made their dream come true. They were really into the game. They were really into what they had to do for what the people here were expecting. And this is what they did.
So what do you think? What next for Lionel Messi? I mean, is this the point that he hangs up the boots and heads off into the sunset? Or do you think, as some are suggesting, he could be there in 4 years' time when Argentina defend the title?
I think this will be his last game. I think I don't know what he plans to do for, I mean, he could be still part of the Argentinian football in other, I don't know, in another part, but not as a player. I think he was waiting for this. He had been waiting for this for a very long time. And this is it. This is like the highest point. And I don't think there will be another match as exciting as this one, another World Cup, another final as exciting as this one. So I think this is it. That will be it for him.
Do you know what? Well, I certainly agree with you as to the quality of the final, but I'll keep my fingers crossed we might just see a little bit more of Lionel Messi. Paola Bracchi, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations and have a lovely Christmas when it comes. An inquest is opening this morning into the deaths of 4 young boys aged between 6 and 11 who fell into a frozen lake in Solihull in the West Midlands. Ivor Bennett is in Birmingham for us this morning. Good to see you, Ivor. I suspect that this is just very much the early stages, the opening of the inquest itself. It will probably run for some time.
The opening and also the adjournment already, Niall, because it was decided, the coroner said, Mrs Louise Hunt, that she really only opened it to say that it's been decided that no post-mortems will be carried out because the boys' deaths clearly relate to drowning, she said. Samuel Butler was the youngest victim of this tragic incident. He was just 6 years old. He died alongside his brother Finlay Butler, their cousin Thomas Stewart, who was 11 years old, and their friend Jack Johnson, who was 10. They died last Sunday at Babsmill Lake in Solihull after falling through the ice at the beginning of that cold period of weather. They were rescued from the frozen water and rushed to hospital, but that's where they were pronounced dead. And it was announced that they died after suffering cardiac arrest. But now we know that their deaths clearly relate to drowning. According to the coroner here, last night, of course, we saw hundreds turn out for a vigil at the lake in their memory. A lot of people in tears there too, after clearly a very emotional impact on the community there. The coroner did also say that a full inquest, it's hoped, will help the families of these little boys understand exactly what happened to them and the valiant efforts by the emergency services to try to save them. As I say, the inquest has now been adjourned until the summer.
Ivor, thank you. Well, it is, of course, the run into Christmas, so let's talk about people providing some kindness this Christmas. Statistics have shown that over 50% of supermarket shoppers are donating to food collections, all part of an attempt to support those hardest hit by the cost of living. Now, these donations help food banks across the country provide emergency food parcels to those in crisis. Our reporter Sadia Chowdhury is at a Trussell Trust food bank in Hackney in East London for us this morning. Sadia, good to see you. Over 50% of supermarket shoppers donating to food collections. That is quite something.
Yes, and we're at one of these warehouses where some of that food comes in. So all of this food here has been donated by Tesco customers who have donated 12.5 million meals already this year. And during a 3-day drive earlier this month, they donated 2.4 million meals. But it is needed. It's a huge amount, but it is needed because the Trussell Trust network says that they are giving out food parcels every 13 seconds. That's quite an incredible number. Well, we can go over now and talk to Pat Fitzsimmons, who is from the Trussell Trust Network. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Pat. It is never a good thing when food banks do so well in this sense, is it?
Well, most charities don't want to exist, but really, food banks do not want to exist. The Trussell Trust does not want to exist. It's a symptom of a broken system. And we don't want to be propping it up, but we have no option.
And what kind of things are people donating and what is needed? You've got a pack here. You're just going to talk us through some of the items.
Well, we have a list that has been developed between the Trussell Trust and the NHS to have a 3-day pack that is nutritionally balanced. A few of the items that we really need all the time are these. We need tinned fruit, we need corned beef. It's not something that people would think of immediately. So it's important that people know the sorts of things that we really need all year round.
And at Christmas, there's a particular time that we see a lot of generosity. But are we reaching everyone, or do we need to see this kind of donation go through all the way into January as well?
Oh, definitely. We are not seeing everyone. We know that. People don't know about food banks. The people who really need it don't know about it. So, yes, we get a lot of donations at Christmas. We really need it all year round because demand is rising and rising and rising, which is not good.
Excellent. Pat, thank you so much for speaking to us. Well, Tesco says that it has food collection points in every single one of its stores now, which it says helps its customers make sure that other people get some of that food as well.
Sadia, thank you. Now let's stick with this topic. We're joined now by the CEO of Food Cycle, Mary McGrath, and the founder of Social Bite, Josh Littlejohn. Both lovely to see you. I wonder, Mary, if we can just start with you. Just tell us a little bit about Food Cycle, what it is you do and the pressures that there are on you currently because of the cost of living crisis, because of the cold.
Yeah, morning, Neil. So Food Cycle builds communities. We provide a really lovely three-course meal for people who may be hungry or who are lonely. And this was with the help of an amazing set of volunteers up and down the country. We're up in Newcastle, down in Exeter, over in Wales, as well as London and the southeast. And we have really seen huge increase in demand this year. Effectively, we're serving double the number of people this time right now than we were at the beginning of the year. More people are in need of a hearty, warm meal, and we're delighted that we can provide that for them.
Indeed. Well, let's bring in Josh, founder of Social Bite. And again, kind of a similar question to you. I understand, of course, yours is a movement to end homelessness. So on top of kind of the cost of living crisis, people going hungry, you know, it's cold out there at the moment and, you know, and there are still hundreds, thousands of people without adequate shelter. Just tell us a little bit about Social Bite.
Yeah, so Social Bite's a social enterprise. We've got a nationwide chain of cafes where we offer jobs to homeless people, and we also run a pay-it-forward system, so customers in the cafes can basically buy something extra, an extra meal or an extra lunch or a hot drink, and homeless people are welcomed in to get something for free that someone's basically bought in advance later. And what this winter meal appeal will enable is for Social Bite to provide tens of thousands of hot meals, freshly made, for people that are homeless, struggling, like you say, is freezing conditions out there. So a hot meal is something so important, particularly as this cost of living crisis takes grip.
Yeah, it certainly does, and it's a fantastic idea. But back to you, Mary, and if you want to have an idea of just how awful, how concerning things are out there, I'm told that you met once, well, in Birmingham, you met a 64-year-old there who is so concerned about the cost of heating his home, the cost of electricity, the cost and so on, that he's no longer putting his kettle on.
That's right. Yes, we're getting stories like that all the time. And I've got a fantastic team of people who are there to help people who are unfortunately in desperate needs, people who are going hungry. We had a telephone call. We're having several telephone calls a day, actually, of people saying that they're really, really hungry, they're really cold, and they're looking for something to eat. And I think the great thing is we're able to provide that support. We look to find support for people, and actually giving people a warm, hot meal is really, really important. Many people are scared to put the kettle on. Many people don't have ovens or are afraid to turn on their ovens. There is a lot of discussion about turning on the heat or having warm food to eat. And when you have those choices, it's great that we have places like Food Cycle and Social Bites for people to come to. And we're absolutely thrilled to be supported as well by the Just Eat Winter Meal Appeal, where, you know, people have been incredibly generous, actually. They have donated the equivalent of 385,000 meals to this campaign, which Josh and I are absolutely thrilled with.
That's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But I was just about to ask a question on that. I mean, Josh, look, I don't care who you are. I mean, unless you're a multi-millionaire, you know, all of us have probably made changes to our life, you know, as we run into Christmas because of the cost of living crisis. Everything's so much more expensive. You know, my energy bills are going through the roof. Does that mean, even at a time like this, that you start to see perhaps the level of donation, the level of support that you get from the public tapering away? Well, going by what Mary was saying, not, actually.
Well, I mean, I've been running Social Bite now for the last 10 years, and it always amazes me at times of crisis in society, at times of economic hardship, you would absolutely expect donations to taper in, but it's always, in my experience, so inspiring to see that it's actually the reverse, and people sometimes, without very much, give to those that are even more in need. And I think the Just Eat Winter Meal Appeal really demonstrates that. I understand they've had 3 times as many people donating, and the way it works is when you go to the checkout and you're ordering a takeaway on Just Eat, you can donate either £1, £5 or £10. And this year, compared to last year, they've had over 3 times as many people donating. And as Mary said, that's helped to fund to this point over 385,000 hot meals, which is going to be delivered over Christmas and right through winter. And we're hoping that those donations keep going up to the end of the year, and hopefully we can hit the 500,000 meal target.
Do you know what? It is the time of year for giving thanks, isn't it? So you can both have mine for all the work that you do. Mary McGrath, CEO of Food Cycle. Josh Littlejohn, founder of Social Bite. Keep up the good work and have a lovely Christmas when it comes.
You too, Niall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Singing Christmas songs, well, it can certainly lift your spirits. But for people living with Parkinson's, stroke or brain injury, Christmas music can do much more than that, helping them with communication, projection and even motor function. That's why songwriter Madeleine Castry has written an original Christmas song sung entirely by those living and affected by neurological disabilities. Let's have a listen. Songwriter and the founder of the charity Resonate, Madeleine Castry. Madeleine, great to see you this morning. I do hope you're well. Just tell me a little bit about how this song came about. Obviously, you have written it, but performance duties have been handed over.
Well, this project was fundamentally born out of my belief that music really can change lives. And after overcoming illness myself as a teenager, I began to fundraise. And I was using my musical background to stage little local concerts. And that all began over 10 years ago. And this then coincided with me meeting a wonderful lady living with Parkinson's. And she was a huge, huge lover of singing. So I began to think about how the classical singing technique I was trained with could be made a little bit more accessible to help her live with her condition. And this snowballed into working with broader Parkinson's support groups, and now some wonderful groups made up of those living with the effects of stroke and brain injury. And this song is the result. It really is a shared effort to show that music really, really can change lives.
I mean, what is fascinating to me, and I've done a thing or two about Parkinson's, what fascinates me is, of course, getting together and singing. Everyone understands the benefits of something like that. Raises the spirits, you make friends, you have a laugh. But the idea that singing like this can bring people together and actually have, you know, an effect on motor skills. Of course, one of the problems with Parkinson's is that degrading kind of motor skill that you have. That is fascinating to me. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, whenever I approach a project like this, I'm always mindful of the different symptoms that can present themselves. So, for instance, Parkinson's has over 40 different symptoms, and a lot of people just think of Parkinson's as the shake, but actually it isn't. There's so many, many different symptoms. And of course, stroke is different for every person. But one thing that you might not consider is how this can affect the voice. So breathing, perception of volume, clarity of words, these are all impacted by neurological disease, and the voice is obviously our main method of communication. So it must be so isolating when that is compromised by a neurological disability. So the songs that I write are made up of motifs that assist in phonation. I've considered things like breath support.
Phonation, can you just explain that? Sorry, it's very early on a Monday morning. You're going to have to explain the terminology. Phonation, what do you mean there?
Phonation, so it's basically how you form your words. And obviously, when you lose the ability to access certain muscles as easily, particularly in the cases of stroke, it's very important that we engage what we call the articulators, so things that move in the mouth. And these can be starting with very small exercises, like imagining you're chewing a toffee and it's getting bigger in your mouth. But then obviously you put this into phrase. And I think that sometimes one of the real big stumbling blocks with neurological conditions is that spontaneity that we have in speech. But we don't necessarily get that with music because we have the beats and the rhythm to help us. So what I've tried to do with these songs is create little phrases, and they're not just uplifting messages of hope, which I hope that everybody can resonate with, but they're also little pocket motifs that people can use when maybe they freeze or they stumble over their words to get their articulators, to get their face moving, and really, really help them improve their quality of life.
And of course, it strikes me, you're classically trained yourselves. I mean, the one thing that classically trained singers never have to worry about is their posture. Posture, of course, another issue for a number of those kind of neurological conditions. Just wondering, though, of the people that you have been interacting with in producing this single, what have they been saying to you? I mean, I was looking at the video there, and everyone seems to be having a ball.
Well, I don't necessarily think that they realise the effect that music can have on them. So it really, really is a case where I've been working with people and their partners and spouses have come up to me and said, this is the first time they've spoken coherently in years, because all of a sudden they've got access to this breath support that they weren't necessarily using before. And also sometimes something so, we wouldn't necessarily think it has such power, but speaking to a beat, using a familiar song or even a little made up rhythm to articulate that speech and to give you that kind of signposting through a phrase, it just gives you that new sense of coherency. And I think above all else, there's nothing more powerful than giving the gift of voice and communication, particularly at Christmas. And these wonderful, courageous people have been, they've been effectively silenced by these neurological conditions and such cruel diseases. And to be able to get them to communicate again through music, well, that's totally priceless.
Madeleine, we are almost out of time in the programme, but so tell us, where can we get hold of the single?
Well, the single's available on all streaming platforms, and if you want to have a look at the charity website, which is resonatemusic.org.uk, there's lots of support materials on there to get everybody involved in using music and singing for health and wellness, those living with disability, and those who just want to use music to spread joy, all on their website.
Madeleine, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the programme. Wish you all the very best with the song, and look, have a lovely Christmas when it comes.
Thank you so much. Happy Christmas.